Sorry.
It's okay.
Good afternoon. Come on, this is supposed to be a lively crowd. Good afternoon. We're here to hear some good news and everything this afternoon and get to ask some questions. Hello, my name is Dorothy Walker. I serve as a Dean of the School of Technology and Applied Sciences here at MATC. I would like to thank you all for coming out this afternoon to this town hall meeting with Senator Tammy Baldwin. Also, on behalf of the Board of Directors of MATC and our President, Dr. Vicki Martin, in her absence, you are in our flagship campus. This is a downtown campus. We have 4 campuses around the MATC district, and we do a lot of things that Senator Baldwin talks about in career and tech education. I first met Senator Baldwin in one of her many visits to MATC. I've seen firsthand how Senator Baldwin has made career and technical education one of her primary focuses in the Senate. As a co-chair of the bipartisan Senate Career and Technical Education Caucus, she has fought to promote workforce development and build a made-in-Wisconsin manufacturing economy through many bipartisan bills to support technical education. And I know that technical education work because I'm a product of technical education. I'm also a product of MATC also. So we thank her for her support in that area. For all of her hard work to promote Wisconsin technical colleges, Senator Baldwin was awarded the Association of Career and Technical Education Policy Maker of the Year. Additionally, that's right, we have a hand of applause in there. Additionally, MATC has been proud to work with her in the RED Act to take the students' loan debt crisis. And we know that that's a serious issue for people who are trying to seek an education to better themselves, and a lot of times only have to get student loans to be able to do that. So we thank her for her work in that area also. Here at MATC, around that, we at MATC have the MATC program that gives students 2 years of free higher education. So she has been very supportive of the president and MATC in the MATC Promise. So they can have a loan debt for them to finish their education here at MATC. Senator Baldwin is working to turn the success we've seen here at the MATC Promise into a national program. And that national program, again, will help students across the country succeed. Tammy Baldwin's story starts in Madison, where she was born and raised. When Tammy was 9 years old, she was diagnosed with a serious childhood illness similar to meningitis. She spent 3 months in the hospital. Tammy got better, but she had been branded for having a pre-existing condition which prevented her from finding health insurance for years and years after. Now, because of the Affordable Care Act, children have protection and can't be denied coverage like Tammy was. And that's something that's very important to parents, especially with children who already have existing health care problems. Tammy went on to graduate from Madison High School, Smith College, and UW-Madison Law. In 1986, she served on the Madison Common Council, was then elected to 4 terms in the Dane County Board of Supervisors and 3 terms as a state representative. In 1998, Tammy shattered Wisconsin's glass ceiling, becoming the first female member of Congress and the nation's only openly gay challenger to Congress. And in 2012, Tammy was elected to the U.S. Senate, making history yet again in Wisconsin as the first female senator and the first openly gay senator ever. And before I hand it off to another trailblazer, Representative Gwen Moore, I'd like to give a few ground rules for today's town hall meeting. Have you seen some of the town hall meetings across the country? But we're better citizens here in Milwaukee in the state of Wisconsin, is that right? So we don't treat our people like that. We don't treat our public officials that way. So we want to be respectful. All viewpoints are welcome and encouraged, but please disagree without being disagreeable and be respectful to each other. At the end of the day, we all still have the Bucks, the Badgers, and Packer fans. Don't forget the Brewers. The Brewers are in that group also. Let's be brief in our comments, 1 to 2 minutes, so that as many people as possible can speak. And don't forget to fill out a slip. So if you want to be able to speak or have a question, then don't forget to be able to fill out a slip. They're out in the hallway. You can do that out there. And then there'll be microphones placed through the audience so that you can come up and you can ask your question from there. Now, it is my pleasure to welcome our own U.S. Representative, Gwen Moore.
Well, hello to the Milwaukee 4th Congressional District Town Hall meeting with our Senator, Tammy Baldwin. You know, I love to brag because when our great Senator Cole decided to leave, and we were thinking about who might run, I love to brag about the fact that I was for Tammy before Tammy was for Tammy. And I am so happy. One of the best decisions I've made in politics is to support Tammy Baldwin for United States Senator. She has really been there for us in so many different areas, judiciary and so many things. But today, we're here, I think, primarily to talk about the Affordable Care Act, since that is the thing that seems to be getting all of the traction. And let me tell you, Tammy Baldwin was then in the House of Representatives when this passed on the Energy and Commerce Committee. They talk about how the Affordable Care Act was passed in the middle of the night, like they did. They had folks up 4:30 in the morning, but actually we had in the House and Senate something like 79 hearings. Over 79 hearings in 3 committees, the Workforce, the Labor Committee, Education and Labor Committee, the Energy and Commerce Committee, on which Tammy served in the House, and the Ways and Means Committee. We had 181 witnesses, and we had a Congressional Budget Office score, which showed that we increase the solvency of Medicare and reduce the deficit. I just want to, before I bring Tammy up, I just want to mention a couple of things. When they tell you that they want to repeal the Affordable Care Act, they want to repeal Obamacare, let's be clear about what they're talking about. It's clear that they want to not only eliminate the individual mandate, but they want to increase the Medicare payroll tax on high-wage individuals, which that was a 3.8% tax on unearned income for high-income taxpayers, tax on tanning beds, tax on health insurance, tax on pharmaceutical manufacturers, excise tax on the sale of medical devices, provision for the cost of over-the-counter drugs and being reimbursed through a tax-deferred health savings, chronic care tax, and a provision increasing the tax on HSA distributions that are not used for qualified medical expenses. In other words, they want to transfer all of those tax cuts from low-income people or working-class people, people who are going to catch hell, who make $20,000 or more on this plan. People who are 50 to 64 years old with no Medicare are going to catch hell. And they claim that they're going to keep Tammy Baldwin's provision in that you can keep kids on your health insurance until you're 26. Sounds like that's going to survive. Thank you, Tammy. That has helped my grandchildren so much. I've benefited from that. But I can tell you, I don't know how they're going to do it. I don't know what kind of voodoo or what they're going to do when they are in providing tax benefits of about $7 million each to the wealthiest, say 400 or 500 people in our society. But Tammy is an expert on this, and I'm going to turn it over to her. She is a phenomenon and has really made a name for herself in the United States Senate. I thank her for coming to Milwaukee.
Yeah.
We missed you in the House of Representatives, but we're so glad you were there to keep bad stuff from happening to us.
Well, thank you so much, Wenmore. You are a fabulous partner in the Congress. And I just actually want to make a few welcoming remarks, but I am here, as this is a town hall meeting and listening session, to do as much listening as I can. I know that there'll be questions that you'll want me to respond to, but feel free to also make statements. Assuming that a significant percentage of the audience this afternoon will want to speak, as you heard Dean Walker admonish, keep your neighbors in mind in terms of the length of your statements or questions, and I will try to do the same. Just in terms of a few words of welcome and sort of giving some voice to what is probably on many people's minds in this room. Welcome to Milwaukee Area Technical College. I am very grateful that the college was willing to open this space for us on a Sunday, not typically open, but recognizing the importance of this institution to this community. We have had a great partnership, and I expect that to continue. I think Congresswoman Moore named it when she indicated that we were likely to hear a lot of comments and questions about our healthcare system, given what is pending before the House right now. You heard a little bit about my own personal story in both Dean Walker's and Congresswoman Moore's introduction. Healthcare is a deeply personal issue for everyone. And it is actually the issue that led me to run for office in the first place, way back when I first ran for the Dane County Board of Supervisors. Because I saw what my family went through. I was raised by my grandparents, and when they had to struggle with paying hospital bills and doctor's bills and couldn't find insurance for me because I had a pre-existing condition, even though I had fully recovered. at 9 years of age, they didn't burden me with their worries. But as I grew older and learned the story of what had happened, I felt that no family should have to worry that they are one illness or one injury away from bankruptcy. And that parents or grandparents or guardians should not have to lay awake at night worrying about whether they could get health care and health insurance for their children. And it has been a decades-long battle in America to try to extend coverage to more and to enact the type of protections that people need to have that peace of mind. But we have long struggled with cost. And the Affordable Care Act did not rid us of that struggle. But the answer, in my mind, and so many others, is not to get rid of those guaranteed protections, is not to give huge tax breaks to the very wealthiest and to, in particular, target insurance CEOs for huge breaks, while diminishing the solvency of Medicare, capping and cutting Medicaid, and making it more difficult for those with pre-existing conditions to be able to afford coverage. I'm fighting this, and I certainly will look forward to hearing your comments, your questions, and your concerns about health care. That's not the only issue on people's minds right now. The results of the November 8th election were both unexpected and unpredicted, and we are in uncharted waters in some very real ways. Whether it's the executive orders and travel bans, the wall, the health care plans that we've just noted, or the failure so far to be held to account for the things that he said he'd do that we want him to do, like Buy America provisions and Hire America provisions. And so I look forward to listening. I look forward to a discussion today. And I think it is that uncharted waters, that fear of harm, the things that we've been seeing in our communities in terms of hate and harassment, that we come together to figure out how each of us can play a role to respond. And on that last point, I wanted to share the news I learned right when I arrived that yet again, Milwaukee's JCC has suffered a bomb threat this morning. The plan is to reopen after it was evacuated earlier, but this cannot continue to go on in our communities. And happy to discuss shortly some of the things that we all can do at this particular time. I'm going to take a seat here and take some notes. What I'd like you to do when you want to make a comment or ask a question is to line up in front of these two microphones. And if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself, we'll go back and forth between the two microphones. And I am, again, delighted to see such great attendance. Stephen, why don't you start?
Hi. First of all, I wanted to commend you for actually appearing in public before your constituents. My concern is with the defunding Planned Parenthood.
As we know, when Mike Pence was governor of Indiana, he defunded Planned Parenthood, and as a result, there was a serious health care crisis in the state. And now he wants to inflict this on the rest of the country as he's working with the Trump mob. As you know, if Planned Parenthood was defunded, half of the counties in Wisconsin would no longer have a community health care center, including Racine, which is in Paul Ryan's district. So I was wondering what you, and in particular, and also the Democrats, are doing to stop the defunding of Planned Parenthood.
So thank you for those comments and that question. I couldn't agree more about the vital role that Planned Parenthood plays for so many. It is oftentimes the closest clinic for people to get basic preventative health care, to get screenings, to engage in family planning. And another thing I want to note about Planned Parenthood, because I had the opportunity recently to, as many in this community did, hear from Cecile Richard, the CEO of Planned Parenthood. You know, there's not a line in the federal budget that says Planned Parenthood and provides funding. What they are proposing to do is to say that if you get, say, a cancer screening at a Planned Parenthood clinic, that they're not going to pay that bill. But if you get that same cancer screening at another clinic not affiliated with Planned Parenthood, they would. What absurdity that is. I plan to, as I have in the past, fight tooth and nail to make sure that their cynical efforts to defund health care provided by Planned Parenthood versus the same health care provided at another clinic, to prevent that from happening. Now, we've been successful before because, particularly in the United States Senate, we have a bipartisan group of folks who feel that this is this should never happen. And I'm going to continue to work with that bipartisan coalition to block any legislation that calls for the defunding of Planned Parenthood. We're going to fight saving lives every day and helping not only, it's not just women who go there for treatment, but providing critical preventative care in our communities.
Get closer. Okay. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I work at the VA here in Milwaukee, and I take my job very seriously, and I hope you do as well. I believe you received multiple reports of abuses at the Toma VA, and you did nothing. I also believe your staff pushed you on the issue. You had them sign non-disclosure agreements, you fired them, and now there's a gag order. I also believe, as a result of inaction, unfortunately and tragically, a U.S. soldier died. My question is this, Senator Baldwin. What are we supposed to do as citizens to ensure that our VA is serving our veterans when elected officials as you are called upon to act and you fail to do so?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for serving our veterans. The work that the VA does is critical, and I'd like to address the issues that you raised in your question. First of all, I'm not going to do it quite in chronological order, but let me talk about a veteran who did die of multiple drug toxicity at the Toma VA. His name was Jason Simkoski. I have worked with the Simkoski family after learning of his death. I learned of his death in January, several months after he had passed away, through an article that was an investigative report. it was widely covered in the newspapers, but for those, I'm going to go into a little detail because probably some in the audience don't know. Jason's parents, Marvin and Linda, and his widow Heather, and his daughter Anaya, decided that they wanted to turn their family's tragedy into hope for others. And we worked together on several fronts. The most, not the most significant, one of the significant ways was passage of my Jason Simkoski Memorial Opioid Safety Act, which is not only going to produce changes at the Toma VA and has, but is a VA-wide reform. And it's critical because we did learn that there was overprescribing of opioids going on at Toma, but frankly at alarming levels across this country. What the measure did, and again, I put this together with the Simkoski family, it required that the VA adopt the latest guidelines of the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control, and train all of their prescribers, not only in the safest guidelines, but also training on when the sort of dangerous mixes if somebody, for example, was on a benzodiazepine as well as an opioid. So that training is ongoing, and in fact, I had an opportunity to get an update from the new VA Secretary, Dr. Shulkin, who was in a different position in the VA when this bill was being passed, so he's very aware of the various details of it. In addition, one of the major concerns of the Simkoski family was that when they were speaking up and trying to advocate for better treatment for their son, that their voices weren't heard and Jason's voice wasn't heard. So we have revamped and strengthened the patient and family advocacy part of the VA, and I hope in your work you're seeing that get implemented so that when you complain or raise a concern, it doesn't go to the treating doctor. It actually goes through other channels so that you can get help and advocacy. In addition, we are trying our best to make sure that there are alternatives for pain treatment in the VA, including acupuncture, water therapy in pools, a number of other issues. All of this was part of the Jason Simkoski Memorial Opioid Safety Act. In addition, I will tell you through my own work and work with Senator Johnson, the director of the Toma VA has been removed, and the chief of staff, who is also one of the prescribing doctors in this case, has been removed, and his medical license has been stripped. He will never be able to practice at the VA or in Wisconsin again. I do want to give an explanation, since you in detailed fashion talked about what had happened before and correct the record. I was elected, as you know, in 2012, and we had heard in, I think it was April of 2014, from a whistleblower at Toma who raised concerns of overprescribing opioids and narcotics to our attention. And I immediately wrote the VA, as well as drawing this to the attention of the VA Inspector General, which is sort of the watchdog arm of the VA. And that was done immediately. When we received replies, we forwarded that information on to the whistleblower who had contacted our office. And that is where I will tell you that I wish we had done more with that information than simply forward it to the whistleblower who had contacted our office and that we had been working with. I have owned up to mistakes, and made changes to make sure that this won't happen again. And it is my absolute honor to have worked with the Simkowski family so closely to not just change the culture at Toma, but to have passed national reforms for all veterans. And I will continue to work with the veterans that I represent to get them the absolute best health care and services that they have earned and deserve in serving our nation. Thank you for your question.
Thank you again for coming this afternoon. I appreciate the chance to talk with you. I'm Pam Bloomer from Oconomowoc. My question is about the November election. You mentioned it was unexpected and unpredicted that Donald Trump will win, and I will tell you it was not unexpected or unpredicted for myself. You look around, you saw no Clinton signs when people should have been proud to put Clinton signs in. Obviously, Trump supporters were not proud to vote for him or hide that vote. But this is the state that voted for Sanders, and superdelegates such as yourself voted for Clinton. And there are those of us who see a different world that could have been had Sanders been our president. The DNC had it set up, the delegate schedule, the refusal of the debate before the California primary. Clinton won red states, Sanders won blue states. All of these problems would not be here today had Sanders won, and the superdelegates played a huge role in selecting Clinton over Sanders. And again now with the DNC chair not selecting Ellison. And my fear is that the Democratic Party is moving towards the middle instead of to the left. You are facing a 2018 election when Democrats don't come out to vote. You need people like Sanders and Ellison to get youth out there and voting. And what the DNC is doing is not doing that. And so that's my concern, is superdelegates and the party ignoring the base.
So I feel very lucky that Bernie Sanders is a friend of mine and that I get to go and work with him every week, and I have since he and I served in the House together way back when I was first elected to the House of Representatives. He is a strong ally, and his run for the presidency, I think, has really elevated and amplified his voice and his influence at this point in time, and I'm proud to partner him on with him on numerous efforts, and will continue to do so. I would also note that I endorsed Keith Ellison for DNC chair, and had a fabulous relationship with him as he represents Minnesota and right across the border, and we've worked on things that have regional impact as well as national and international impact. In terms of, and I know that there's been references to elections, and we will, we have one coming up in April here that's nonpartisan. We have one coming up next year. I certainly think of those things, but I'm here as a senator for the people of Wisconsin. And when I ran in 2012, I pledged to stand up to the powerful interests in Washington that I believe are rigging the system against average working people, and to do what I could to create opportunities for everyone to get ahead. And to me, it is much more about focusing on those issues than party. We do need strong parties. We need strong parties on both sides to have a debate in this country. But I'm here to listen to the people of this state, and to hear your concerns and fight as hard as I can with those strong allies to allow everybody an opportunity to reach their aspirations.
Thank you so much for having the courage, Senator Baldwin, to come and speak to the people. I really appreciate it. I'm a Vietnam veteran.
Thank you for your service.
I know a lot of people are saying to us veterans these days, thank you for your service. But I consider that a teaching moment when you say that. Who were we really serving? When I spent 8 months in a body cast when I came home. And in that time and for decades after, I've tried to study American foreign policy as best I can. And the more I learn, the more disgusted I become. We have a budget, a military budget, that's bigger than the next 7 nations that are highly involved in killing, as we are. Now, our new president has said that he wants to up the military budget by $54 billion. That's like feeding a bloated monster more food. That's the way I see it. And now, did I hear correctly that you are thinking about supporting increasing the U.S. military budget?
I don't know where you might have heard that. What I will tell you, were you done? I didn't want to stop.
No.
So I listened to what Donald Trump said with alarm. And I will say a couple of things. One, it is, at least we haven't seen his budget yet. We've just seen these ideas floated, so we haven't seen it yet. But there are reports that he would snatch funding from entities like the State Department and the Environmental Protection Agency and other critical domestic programs in order to fund this defense surge or defense spending. A lot of things go into keeping us safe as a country. Safety from poisonous water is also important. And when you look at the State Department, and I heard the proportions of this cut were somewhere in the neighborhood of 37, 38%, which is staggering if you think about that. But the idea of gutting our diplomacy, our smart power in the world, the way we demonstrate our values globally, at the same time as talking about this Defense Plus Up is horrifying to me. Now, only at this point seeing reports of what might be in this budget. A new president is granted an extra period of time in order to put together his first budget. But I can tell you that what he is describing is absolutely unacceptable in my view. I want to, before you ask your question, wanted to acknowledge, I think they're standing in line to ask questions also, but we do have 2 other elected officials besides Congresswoman Moore spending time here to listen as well as participate, and I do want to recognize them. So I'm not going to do it out of order, but State Representative Chris Sinicki is here. And we also have Milwaukee County Board Supervisor Marina Dmitrievich. Did I get it close? Oh, right in front, right in front. All right, so you're in the queue soon, but sir, you go ahead.
Hello, my name is Arthur. With your permission, I would like to ask you a national Democratic Party issue. It's
Sure.
not going to be, just Wisconsin. So the National DNC Resolution 33 was voted on February 25th. This resolution would have restored a ban on corporate PAC money to the DNC and would have ended the DNC chair from appointing registered federal corporate lobbyists from serving as members at large. This resolution did not pass. Am I wrong in feeling like this leaves our party for sale to corporate interests?
Well, we have to figure out how to get money out of politics at all levels, the parties, and frankly, it's gotten completely out of control with regard to campaigns too, at all levels. I had such hope that we might be at a moment where we would have the prospect of overturning the Citizens United decision and be able to come back to a place where Congress could actually regulate how elections and parties are financed. Regrettably, that does not look like it's going to happen in the near future, either by way of the Supreme Court reversing that earlier decision. I think that it is important to model the behavior and conduct that you wish would be, would happen elsewhere. And so, if I had been a member of the DNC, I am not, I suspect I would have supported that resolution. Let me just say that the caveat, I haven't read the details other than how you describe it, but it sounds like the sort of thing that I would support. Let me, beyond that, talk also about the additional corrupting influence I think we have with the revolving door, not just in politics, but in government. Even in the Obama administration, and certainly in the Bush administration before it, I spoke out and stood up to appointees that I felt were still beholden to their former employers and their former entanglements. And now more than ever, we need to continue to focus in on that. By way of example, Rex Tillerson got a $180 million golden parachute or payout from ExxonMobil before taking the oath of office as Secretary of State. He has not promised to recuse himself from that part of the decision-making in the department, in the State Department that looks at our oil activity overseas. We have the director of the National Economic Council, Gary Cohn, who got a $285 million golden parachute for public service from Goldman Sachs. This has to come to an end, and it's why I'm the Senate lead, and Elijah Cummings in the House is the House lead on a measure to stop the revolving door and to end the practice of golden parachutes for public service. These servants need to be public servants. They need to serve you, and we cannot have doubts that they are instead pursuing corporate interests, just like the concern you bring up with regard to the DNC. As I said, if I had been on the DNC, assuming that that resolution is how you describe it, that would be something I would support. So, you're saying district, okay. Supervisor, Supreme, Moore, where are you?
Over to your right.
Is also present and listening. We appreciate your presence, Supreme. Thanks. District 10.
Welcome to the 10th District.
Hi again, Senator Baldwin. My name is Carol Wessels, and the reason I'm here today is because I'm very concerned about the impact that Alzheimer's is going to be having on our country over the next 30 years. I stand here as a person who's been affected by Alzheimer's. I lost my mother and was a caregiver, and I know that you share that impact as well. You are a caregiver. So I'm here to say, first of all, a big thank you, and to make a couple of requests. If you don't mind, I'll get it all out. So my thanks is for the great support that you've been as an Alzheimer's advocate. You have been very supportive of legislation that'll help families and also to help providers. Last year you introduced the Palliative Care, Hospice, Education, and Training Act. And Congresswoman Moore also supported that. So thank you so much for doing that last year, and I hope you'll do it this year. That is going to help so many people understand and benefit from those end-of-life cares, hospice and palliative cares, that they can receive both, and my parents benefited from that. So I hope you'll reintroduce that or be involved in actively supporting that again this year.
Absolutely.
Yay! And then the other thing is that we are asking this year for an increase of $414 million in Alzheimer's research. The only way we can make this a disease that has a cure is to drastically increase research funding. So I'd ask you to be supportive of that as well.
Thank you. I will be. And may I also add a comment? You talked about caregiving. And as you noted, I have also we had the honor of providing care for my grandmother. You know, she interrupted her life to raise me, and it felt like an honor to give back. But having said that, caregivers often suffer themselves financially, health-wise, become isolated, providing care to a loved one. I will never forget the roundtable I had here in Milwaukee with caregivers telling their stories. Unbelievable sacrifice. And we do very little as a society to recognize the caregiving role. If you put a dollar value on caregiving, it would be close to the entire Medicare budget. In other words, if you had to pay somebody to do what family members and loved ones do to take care of ill and frail relatives. And yet we have no national caregiving policy. And so a bill that I want to draw your attention to that disproportionately applies to caregivers of people with Alzheimer's, but also with all sorts of other conditions, is called the Raise Family Caregivers Act, that I partner with Republican Senator from Maine, Susan Collins. So the two of us wrote the measure together to insist that we create a national caregiver policy and to give more support, training to those heroic individuals who make such a difference. So thank you.
Okay. Hello. Marina Dmitrievich, County Supervisor for the South Side of Milwaukee. Senator Baldwin started out her career as a supervisor. And thank you for recognizing me. First of all, I wanted to say thank you for having a town hall in Milwaukee. We know colleagues like Congressman Paul Ryan can't even be found last was sighted on horseback on the border of Mexico. But anyways, I'm also the state director of the Wisconsin Working Families Party, and in less than 24 hours, we asked people in Wisconsin to come to the meeting and to sign a thank you card. And hundreds of people did that, and I wanted to deliver that to you. So thank you for your service. I'll give that to you, sir. And then quickly, you already mentioned it, Senator, but I want to make sure everybody here knows. We have our own national champion in Senator Baldwin standing up to Wall Street. As she mentioned, she sponsored legislation to close the carried interest loophole, ending the outrageous practice of giving golden parachutes to Wall Street executives. If you recall, Donald Trump spoke a lot about Wall Street, and he even said hedge fund managers were getting away with murder. Senator Baldwin, do you think that President Trump would work with a champion like you against Wall Street? Or is he all talk like we've seen much of this administration?
You know, my job is to hold him accountable to the things that he said he would do that we agree with. There's supposed to be a caveat there. So he said, buy America, hire America. We're a big manufacturing state, and I'm going to every day remind him of those words and see that we do everything we can to turn them into action. And I hope we get a chance to talk about that piece of it more. He also said he'd drain the swamp. I'm not holding my breath given the nominees that we have seen, and you know, and then there's him. He hasn't released his taxes. He's not adequately divested himself from the Trump organization. And I'm going to continue to do everything I can to bring him to account on those issues. Now, in terms of his, there's several things he said on the campaign trail with which I think we could all agree. He said he distinguished himself from other Republicans in the primary because he would protect Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. We are already seeing two of the three being, well, he's not keeping faith with those promises. We've got to keep him accountable. And then, which one am I missing? The carried interest loophole. So the carried interest loophole is a fancy way of saying that if you're a hedge fund manager, you don't pay income taxes on your income the same way others do. You pay at a lower rate. This is, remember when Warren Buffett years ago said that his secretary paid at a higher tax rate than he did? Well, that's the carried interest loophole. We need to get rid of it. Trump said he agreed with that, believe it or not. He has an opportunity to follow through, and I'm going to do everything I can to help him. Maybe he'll endorse my bill to get rid of it. We'll see what we can do.
Hi, Senator Baldwin. You just spoke of the Trump's failure to divest of his business interests and his failure to release his taxes, and said you'll hold him accountable. I guess that's part of my question. And every day there's a new revelation about something to do with Russia, something to do with some other craziness, and it seems like there is no holding him accountable. Everything is referred to a Senate committee. The Senate committees are dominated by who? Republicans, who have a vested interest in keeping these things under the carpet. So how do we hold him accountable?
Yeah. I share those concerns, and so a couple of things. It's one of the reasons why I've called for a nonpartisan independent commission to get to the bottom of so many of these allegations. Let us name, first of all, the thing we can all agree on, I hope, because all 17 of our intelligence agencies confirmed it, is that there was interference by Russia, a hostile foreign power, in our elections. There's agreement on that. Now, we get additional allegations of Trump associates during his campaign, Trump associates during his transition, Trump associates during his now term as president, with extensive communications with Russian intelligence officials or intelligence agents, there's certainly allegations out there of financial transactions. We don't know yet where those will lead, but we have to find out. So I do support a nonpartisan, sort of like the 9/11 Commission type entity being created and moving forward. Let me just state the obvious. In order to pass a bill to create that, we would need Republican votes, because there's a Republican majority in the House, a Republican majority in the Senate, and Trump would ultimately have to sign that bill. So I'm calling for it. It's going to be tough. That's why it's so important that we also have the investigations that are going on right now. I don't believe that, or let me restate that. I would like them to be as transparent as possible, and the fact that it's intelligence committees in both houses that won't have as transparent a process as you would see in other committees disturbs me. I will tell you that increasingly, and we gotta support them when they do this, increasingly a handful of my Republican colleagues are saying if they feel they're being stonewalled, that they will indeed vote to create an independent commission. So, you know the names, John McCain, Lindsey Graham, and others need to take this interference that we have seen in our election process seriously and stand up for America and put country before party. I want to remind them of that at every opportunity. The last thing I would mention is I voted against Jeff Sessions to be our Attorney General for a multitude of reasons. But when he was indeed confirmed, I called upon him to recuse himself from participating in the investigations to the degree that that is a duty of the Attorney General, and for large part it is. Ultimately, he did recuse himself after it was revealed that he was not truthful in front of his confirmation hearing. I agree with Al Franken that he should return to that to that committee and be subject to additional questions. But I think right now what he needs to do is appoint a special prosecutor.
Thank you, Senator Baldwin, Tammy, for holding this today. I'm actually here, I'm wearing two hats today. On my first hat, I am representing a district of about 57,000 people, 60% of whom did not vote for Donald Trump or Ron Johnson. Daily, I get phone calls and emails thanking both you and Congresswoman Gwen Moore for standing strong and continuing to fight for our values. So that's my first hat. Thank you so much for being here. And my second hat, and I've got my sister Julie Buchholz with me. My second hat is that of a sister and an aunt. She's going to ask a question, if she may, when I'm done, kind of give you some background for just a minute. My sister Julie and her two beautiful daughters, my nieces, all suffer from a rare neurological disease. It's relatively rare. It's called myasthenia gravis. Julie is a MPS teacher. She goes to work every day, except for 1 day a week, when she has to have what is called her infusion, and I'm not even sure what all that exactly entails. But it takes hours. She has a visiting nurse come in. That infusion costs just her, one person, 1 day a week, for the medicine that keeps her alive, basically, $15,000 a week. It's my understanding that right now, the whole issue of pre-existing conditions is going to be left intact. Is that correct?
I would like to elaborate more, because it's not as clear as that. They're saying, the people who put the bill together are saying that we will keep the protections for people with pre-existing conditions. There are loopholes in my mind that we need to discuss and educate around. It may be that insurance access, quote unquote, will still be there, but costs, premium costs and deductibles will make that unaffordable.
Do you mind if she asks a question?
Not at all, go ahead.
And then the other question I have is, will there be a maximum payout? Will the cap be back on? Because with the ACA, there was no maximum payout. And now if there is a maximum payout, we will reach that with the 15,000 weekly, along with my daughters. My daughters are young. One is 21 and one is 25. So they will definitely reach that maximum. Will that be back on? And that scares us to death, my husband and I.
So let me tell you, let me explain what I know to be in this proposal that they're putting forward, and maybe say a couple of other things about what's likely to happen to it once it leaves the House of Representatives and comes to the Senate. So the proponents of this new measure claim that there are still protections for those with pre-existing health conditions. As I read the bill, they're correct in so much as insurers would still have to provide the insurance for somebody with a pre-existing condition if they have been continuously insured up until, there can be only a very short gap, and they still have to issue the insurance. If there's a longer gap, they don't. So to me, that gets rid of the